If you're still saving money in a bank, then you're a loser. At least that's what Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, would call you, because he says that savers are losers. And in this video, I want to explain exactly why he's right. Have you ever wondered why house prices generally seem to just keep going up year on year? Okay, they might dip a little bit from time to time, depending on what's happening in the market. But generally, if you look over, say, a 10 or 15 or 20-year period, your house is probably worth much more than it was back then. Whether you are renting or buying or investing, it's a really important factor to have a look at. Now, This Is Money produced a really helpful prices and inflation calculator a couple of years ago. And I've just sort of jumped onto the website to look at a bit of a comparison. If we look at the prices and inflation calculator from This Is Money, it gives us a really good insight into what's been happening with inflation over these years. So let's have a look at what something would have been 10 years ago. If I bought something for £100 10 years ago, and I'm just going to pull that down to 2015, today it would cost me £146 and 4p. So you can see quite a lot of change in the price there. Now, what would a lump sum today have been worth in previous years? So again, if we put in, let's say we've got £100 in cash and we're thinking about putting it in the bank, what if we had done that 10 years ago? Well, all that we would have needed 10 years ago to get the same result was £68.48. And in fact, the thing about inflation is it works backwards the same way as it works forwards. So, for example, if I share with you the CPI inflation calculator that you can have a look at, you can see that £68 in 2015, today, in fact, I'll take it back to the end of 2024, was worth £93.90 at the end of 2024. So it's not identical, but it is a similar metric that playing forward CPI or RPI inflation or playing it backwards gives you a very similar result. The overall point is that inflation erodes the value of money. Now let's have a look at the total rate of inflation since 2015 in this particular calculator. Now you can see there how shocking it is that we've had 46.04% cumulative inflation over the last 10 years. Is it any wonder we're in a cost of living crisis? But unfortunately, of course, as we know, interest rates often vary as well, and you don't always get back as much as you're actually losing due to inflation. Now, if you follow the inflation figures, you'll know that every month they come out, the Office of National Statistics produces the inflation figures for the previous 12 months. And this is often based on the Consumer Price Index. You'll hear them talk about CPI. This means really a basket of goods that they've gone to any random supermarket. They've put in this kind of, theoretical basket, including washing powder and a can of baked beans and a loaf of bread and half a dozen eggs. And they look at the prices that you're paying in the shops. And lo and behold, they will judge how much more money you're paying for that small basket of goods now than you were a month ago. And then we can look back and see what the annual rate of inflation is doing. Now, last month, the annual rate of inflation for the previous year was 3.5%. And that probably doesn't sound too bad, does it? But when you combine it with the previous years and the previous years and the previous years before that, and you look back, in this case, 10 years, you can see the incredible levels of inflation that we've been putting up with in the UK. Now, the great thing about this calculator is you can also then look at the different years and how they've actually affected your own money, the cash that you have sitting in the bank account. So let's say you put £100 in a bank in 2015. That is now worth £68.48. And even with interest and compounding that interest, you will not have made up that £31.52 that you will have lost due to inflation. So this is why, as property investors, it's very important to understand the wider economic macro money supply. It's important you understand the impact that interest has on your money, but also that inflation has on your money. Now, why would this be important as a property investor? So the reason this is important for us as property investors is that what we're doing by investing in property is hedging against the rate of inflation. In other words, we're buying an asset that has an inherent value within it, whether it's a single buy to let or an HMO or a commercial property, it doesn't really matter. Any kind of real estate will do because as it's got bricks and mortar, it's got a tangible value to it. It's not money that the government can create excessive amounts of through the fiat money system. And that's what leads to inflation, the creation of extra money, money flowing around the system, and this devalues the currency. On the other hand, if you're investing in various different asset classes, one of which is property, this will stop the effect of inflation affecting the value of that particular item. And very often, when we look at charts that compare the rate of growth in house prices versus normal inflation, you'll see that house price growth massively overwhelms what you can get from if you were to invest your money in the bank. If you're interested to know how much a house has gone up in value over the last 10 years, there's a really useful tool called the Nationwide House Price Calculator tool, and I'll put the URL in the bottom of the screen so you can see it. If you want to go on and find out how much property would have been, what you would have paid for 10 years ago for that property, you can go on this tool and it will tell you. So let's just test this out now. So the region that I live in and that I invest in is the Northwest, so I'm going to put that in there. Let's imagine you had a property worth £100,000 10 years ago. So I'm going to put in that my property was last valued at £100,000 and I'm going to put in that it was January 2015. So I'll put that in here. And I want to compare it to the very latest figures that we've got. Now, the figures for 2025 aren't out yet, so it's going to have to be the last quarter of 2024. But as I put that in there and I get results, you can see that in the difference in valuation for a property in the Northwest region has moved from £100,000 in 2015. Now it would be valued at £151,000 based on the rate of inflation. Percentage change in price, 51%. This very much tallies with the price change that the This Is Money website showed us in terms of the general reduction in value of the pound and the increase in general prices that you'll pay through CPI inflation through things you're buying in the shops. Now, why is this important if you are a property investor? Well, because what it means is that any property that you buy will not only track inflation, it may well go above inflation, which means that you're making more money on the capital value of that property. The other thing is, of course, with property, you can leverage it using a mortgage. And I'm going to talk about that in a later video. The power of leverage. So you are protecting your money against inflation. You have to bear in mind interest rates on any debt that you've got, as such as a mortgage. But being able to leverage also allows you to literally 10x the value of that property over time because you're using somebody else's money to hedge against inflation. This is why Robert Kiyosaki says savers are losers, because savers put money into the bank and lose money, whereas investors put money into property and make money. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks for watching.